Close your eyes for just a moment. Listen. Can you hear it? That slow, satisfying click of a rotary phone dial making its journey back home. Can you feel the weight of the solid, heavy receiver in your hand? Today, we are not just talking about old things. We are opening a door to the past, to the world of the 1970s. We will revisit 20 everyday objects that were once the backdrop to our lives, but have now vanished almost completely. Each one tells a story about who we were, how we lived, and how we connected with one another. And stay with us until the end, because the last item we'll remember isn't just an object. It was a shared family ritual that brought us all together in a way that's hard to imagine today. They say time moves faster now, and perhaps it's true. Back then in the 70s, time had a different texture. It was something you lived in, not something you raced against. We had the gift of waiting. We waited for our favorite show to come on at its scheduled time. We waited for a letter to arrive in the mail. We waited for photos to be developed at the drugstore. This waiting wasn't empty. It was filled with anticipation, with conversation, with life itself. We talked to our neighbors over the fence. We called our friends and were truly present in the conversation, not distracted by a screen in our hand. People believe that without today's technology, life was somehow less. But the truth is, it was richer in a different way. It was a life built on patience, tangible connections, and the simple, profound joy of being together. The sheer physicality of it. It was a piece of furniture, a permanent fixture in the home, usually on a special little table in the hallway. The cord, a long, coiled serpent, tethered you to one spot. You couldn't walk and talk. You had to stand and talk. Each number was a commitment. You'd stick your finger in the hole and pull the dial all the way around, hearing that wonderful whirring sound as it returned. A zero felt like it took an eternity, and there was a certain rhythm to it, a muscle memory. You knew your best friend's number by feel, not just by sight. If you made a mistake, you had to hang up with a sigh and start all over. There was no redial, no call waiting, just one conversation, one connection at a time. It demanded your full attention, and in return, it gave you a real uninterrupted conversation. This small, unassuming magazine was the key to the entire week's entertainment. It would arrive, fresh off the press, and the first thing you'd do was sit down and circle the shows you wanted to watch. It was a family ritual. Planning the week's viewing was a serious negotiation. Will we watch The Waltons or MASH? The descriptions were brief, just a sentence or two, leaving so much to the imagination. The articles gave you a glimpse into the lives of the stars, long before the internet made everyone's life an open book. And the best part? The close-up features, which highlighted a special movie or a premiere. That little magazine held the power of the schedule. It taught us patience. If you missed your show, that was it. There was no streaming, no on-demand. You just had to wait for the rerun, maybe next summer. Before built-in flashes, there was the magic and the slight terror of the flash cube. It was a clear plastic cube with 4 tiny single-use flash bulbs inside. You'd press it onto the top of your Instamatic camera, and with each picture, the cube would rotate with a satisfying clunk, presenting a fresh bulb. Taking a picture was an event. You'd hear the ka-chunk of the shutter, followed by a blindingly bright, instantaneous pop, and the smell of hot plastic and burnt magnesium. For a second, Everyone saw spots, and you only had 4 shots per cube. That made every picture precious. You didn't just snap away. You composed the shot. You made sure everyone was smiling because each flash was a finite resource. After 4 pictures, you'd pop the hot used cube off and throw it away. It was disposable technology at its most wonderfully inefficient. The sound of the 70s was often delivered through the humble 8-track tape. It was the king of car audio. These chunky plastic cartridges offered a continuous loop of music, but with a strange quirk. The tape was divided into 4 programs, and right in the middle of your favorite guitar solo or a heartfelt lyric, you'd hear it, the loud clear chunk as the player switched tracks. It was jarring, it was disruptive, but it was just part of the experience. We learned the exact moment the track would change on our favorite albums. We'd try to wedge a matchbook under the tape to make it play more smoothly. They would get chewed up by the player, unspooling a ribbon of magnetic tape all over the car floor. But when it worked, it was pure magic. It was your music on your terms, in your wood-paneled station wagon. Every student from the 70s remembers the smell. It was a sweet, sharp, intoxicating aroma of ink and solvent that meant a test or a worksheet was being handed out. The mimeographed machine was a marvel of low-tech printing. A teacher would type or draw onto a wax paper stencil, which was then wrapped around a drum filled with ink. You'd turn a crank, and with each rotation, a fresh, slightly damp, purple-inked copy would slide out. The first few copies were dark and smeary. The last few were faint and hard to read, but those in the middle were perfect. We'd hold the papers up to our noses and inhale deeply. That smell was the official scent of learning, of pop quizzes, of classroom notices. It was a messy, mechanical, and wonderfully tactile way of sharing information before the age of digital files. Long before loyalty cards and digital points, there were S&H green stamps. Getting them was part of the weekly grocery shopping ritual. The cashier would hand you a long ribbon of these little perforated stamps based on how much you spent. At home, the job of licking them and pasting them into the redemption books often fell to the kids. Your tongue would taste like glue for hours. Page after page, you'd fill the books, watching your savings grow. The goal was to collect enough books to trade for something special from the S&H catalog. A new toaster, a set of lamps, a fancy doll. It taught a generation about saving and working towards a goal. It turned the mundane act of buying milk and bread into a slow, steady treasure hunt, with the promise of a tangible reward at the end of the rainbow. The sound of a room full of typewriters is a sound we'll never hear again. It was a symphony of clicking keys, the ding of the bell at the end of the line, and the forceful zip of the carriage return. Every letter was a physical act. You had to press down with intent. A typo wasn't easily fixed. It involved messy correction fluid like liquid paper or a special erasing ribbon. You had to plan your sentences because revision was a chore. The texture of the paper, the smell of the ink ribbon, the satisfying heft of the machine itself, it made writing feel important, like you were carving your words into history. There was no delete key for your thoughts. You had to think before you typed. A discipline that feels a world away from our current cut-and-paste reality. Before Amazon, there was the wish book. The arrival of the massive Sears or J.C. Penney catalog was a major event. especially the big Christmas edition. It was hundreds, sometimes over 1,000 pages of everything you could possibly imagine. Clothes, tools, furniture, appliances, and most importantly, toys. Kids would spend hours on the floor poring over the toy section, circling their heart's desires with a pen. The pages would become soft and worn from repeated viewing. It was a portal to a world of possibilities. You could build an entire life from that catalog, from the cradle to the curtains in your living room. It wasn't just a store. It was a cultural document, a snapshot of American dreams and aspirations delivered right to your doorstep. The anticipation of its arrival and the dreams it held within its glossy pages were a special kind of magic. Getting a clear picture on the television was an art form, not a science. The masters of this art were the rabbit ear antennas, a set of 2 telescoping metal rods perched on top of the TV. If the picture was fuzzy or filled with snow, the ritual would begin. You'd get up, extend one ear, then the other. You'd tilt them left, then right. You'd try a V shape, then a horizontal line. Sometimes the secret ingredient was a strategically crumpled piece of aluminum foil attached to the ends. Everyone in the family had their own theory about what worked best. And often you'd find the perfect position only to have the picture go fuzzy again the moment you sat back down. It was a constant, frustrating, yet strangely communal battle against the invisible waves floating through the air. In many neighborhoods, the day began with the quiet clinking of glass bottles. It was the sound of the milkman making his rounds. Many homes had a small built-in metal door, usually next to the back door, called a milk chute. You'd leave your empty glass bottles and a note for the milkman in the chute the night before. In the morning, you'd open the little door from inside your kitchen, and there it would be, fresh, cold milk in heavy glass bottles with a thick layer of cream at the top. You might also find eggs, butter, or cottage cheese. It was a system built on trust and routine. The milkman was a familiar, friendly face in the community. It was a direct connection to the farm, a simple, reliable service that made you feel cared for, a reminder of a time when the essentials of life were delivered with a personal touch. This was 3D entertainment you could hold in your hands. The Viewmaster was a sturdy, often red plastic viewer that looked a bit like binoculars. The magic was in the thin cardboard discs called reels, which held 7 pairs of tiny, transparent color photographs. You'd slide a reel into the slot, hold the viewer up to the light, and pull the lever on the side. Ka-chunk! A stunningly clear 3-dimensional image would appear before your eyes. It was like looking through a window into another world. The reels covered everything: Disney stories, national parks, scenes from popular TV shows. Collecting the reels was as much fun as viewing them. It was a quiet, personal, and immersive experience that could transport you to far-off lands, all from the comfort of your living room floor. Before automatic ice makers, making ice was a surprisingly hands-on and sometimes painful process. The ice cube trays were made of aluminum. You'd fill them with water and carefully place them in the freezer. The real challenge came when you needed the ice. The tray would be frozen solid. You'd run it under hot water for a second, trying to loosen its grip. Then you'd pull up on the metal lever that was connected to the dividers. It required a surprising amount of force. With a loud crack, the lever would break the ice free into cubes, but often your wet fingers would instantly freeze to the cold metal lever. a stinging sensation every kid from that era remembers well. It was a small daily struggle, but the sound of those freshly cracked cubes clinking into a glass was the sound of pure refreshment. This was your first taste of musical freedom. The transistor radio was a small, portable device, often powered by a single 9-volt battery. It wasn't about high-fidelity sound. It was about privacy and portability. You could take it to your room, listen under the covers late at night, or bring it to the beach. You'd carefully turn the dial, listening to the static hiss as you searched for your favorite AM station. You'd hear the DJ's voice, the latest hits from the Carpenters or Elton John, and the jingles for local businesses. It was your own personal soundtrack. Many came with a single, clear plastic earphone, a tiny speaker you'd plug in so you could listen without disturbing anyone. It was the original personal electronic device, a small box that connected you to a much bigger world of music and news. Opening a can of soda used to be a little more dangerous. Before the modern stay-on tab, there was the pull tab. It was a small ring of aluminum that you would pull to open the can. But once you pulled it, the sharp-edged tab came completely off in your hand. What did you do with it? Some people would drop it back into the can, a risky move. Most people, unfortunately, would just toss it on the ground. These sharp little metal rings were everywhere, on beaches, in parks, on sidewalks. You learned very quickly to wear shoes at the beach to avoid a nasty cut. It was a terribly flawed design from an environmental standpoint, but the satisfying snap of pulling that tab off a cold can of Coke on a hot day is a sound that is seared into the memory of a generation. In an office, the Rolodex was the command center of contacts. It was a rotating file device holding hundreds of specially designed index cards. Each card had a name, a company, an address, and a phone number, all typed or neatly written. Finding a contact involved a satisfying spin of the wheel. You'd flick through the alphabetized cards with your finger, the soft thump, thump, thump of the cards, a familiar office sound. It was a physical database of your professional life. Adding a new contact meant typing up a new card. Changing the number meant using correction fluid or starting over. It was a tangible network. You could see all your connections right there on your desk, a testament to the relationships you had built, one card at a time. It was a system that was organized, reliable, and entirely offline. The family vacation wasn't over until you had the slideshow. After a trip, you'd get your photos back not as prints, but as tiny transparencies mounted in cardboard squares. The ritual involved setting up a big screen in the living room, turning off all the lights, and loading the slides into a round tray called a carousel. Then, with the whole family gathered, the show would begin. The projector would hum and its fan would fill the room with a warm, dusty smell. With each press of the button on the remote, you'd hear the iconic ka-chunk-chick sound as the machine changed slides. The bright, luminous images projected on the screen were magical, far more vibrant than a simple photograph. It was a shared event, a narrated journey back to those happy moments, a flickering light in a darkened room that brought everyone together. Before Google, there was the encyclopedia, and it didn't just appear. It was often sold by a charming, well-dressed salesman who came right to your door. Owning a set of Encyclopedia Britannica was a status symbol. It was a sign that your family valued knowledge and education. The long row of handsome leather-bound volumes looked so impressive on the bookshelf. When you had a school report to write, you wouldn't go online. You'd go to the shelf, pull down the heavy volume for A or P, and lose yourself in its pages. The rustle of the thin paper, the smell of ink and binding, the detailed illustrations and transparent overlays of the human body, it was a treasure trove of information. It taught you how to research, how to follow a thread from one topic to another, and how to appreciate the weight of knowledge, both literally and figuratively. Twice a year, a pair of thick, heavy books would appear on your doorstep with a thud. These were the white pages and the yellow pages. They were the internet of their day. The white pages listed every person and business in your town alphabetically by last name. The yellow pages organized businesses by category. Need a plumber? Let your fingers do the walking through the yellow pages. The ads were simple, often just black and yellow text, but they were all you had. Kids would sit on them at the dinner table to reach their plates. You'd use them to press flowers or swat flies. They were a comprehensive map of your entire community, a physical directory of every neighbor and every service. When you needed to find someone, you didn't search, you looked them up. It was a simple, straightforward system that connected the entire town. Going to the drive-in was an iconic 70s experience. You'd park your station wagon in front of a giant screen under the stars. But the sound didn't come from the screen. It came from a clunky metal speaker box that you'd pull from a post and hang on your partially rolled-up car window. The sound quality was terrible. It was tinny, scratchy, and full of static. You'd have to fiddle with the volume knob constantly. But it was your own private sound system. It created a sense of intimacy inside the car, even as you were part of a huge crowd. You'd smell the popcorn from the concession stand and hear the dialogue crackling through that heavy little speaker. It was an imperfect technology, but it was an essential part of the unique, unforgettable magic of watching a movie in your own car on a warm summer night. Television wasn't a 24-hour-a-day affair. Late at night, the programming would simply stop. First, a local announcer might wish you a good night. Then you might see a short film or a montage of patriotic images while the national anthem played, and after that the station would switch to a test pattern. It was often an image of a Native American chief in a headdress, surrounded by geometric shapes and color bars. This image would be accompanied by a steady, monotonous tone. It was the signal that the broadcast day was over. There was nothing left to watch. It was time to go to bed. This nightly sign-off was a shared cultural moment. It was a reminder that even the magical world of television had its limits. It created a quiet, definitive end to the day, a moment of stillness before the house went dark. As we look back at these 20 objects, it becomes clear we're not just missing the things themselves. We're not longing for the inconvenience of a rotary phone or the fuzzy picture from a rabbit ear antenna. What we truly miss is the world they represent. We miss a time when a photograph was a precious event. We miss a time when connecting with someone meant giving them our undivided attention. We miss the shared, simple rituals that brought families and communities together in a tangible way. These objects were the tools we used to build our lives and our memories. They remind us of our youth, of the people we loved, and of a feeling of connection that seems harder to find today. Thank you so much for taking this journey back in time with us. If these memories warmed your heart, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to our channel for more trips down memory lane. And now, we'd love to hear from you. What is the one object from your childhood, the one thing that has long since disappeared, that you wish you could hold in your hands just one more time? Please share your story in the comments below. We read every single one.